Cool, good deal. So my name is Mickey Gaminol with Gaminol Tutors. ASVAB Domination. If you or anyone you know is going into the military, you can look me up, gaminoltutors.com.
Paula Williams with ABCI, and also Mickey's mom and John's wife. And we help aviation companies sell more of their products and services.
And I'm John Williams, and I work for her, but I do, in the event that we get, and we do get questions on business consulting rather than marketing, and I take care of those from time to time.
I'm Sean Kerr with CS&A Aviation, and I deal with, personally, I deal with mainly on the aviation insurance space, folks that have businesses or within the aviation space or have an aircraft in conjunction with their business. So that's kind of where my bailiwick is within the big aviation space.
So you do 135 and 91. Cool.
Correct.
Hi, I'm Dave Pearl. I'm the fly writer. I write for aviation businesses. If it can be written, I can write it. I'll give your message wings.
Sweet. So let's jump into tough negotiations. My business is run at a different caliber as far as like how much people are spending and things like that. But a lot of times you'll hear that's not as relevant as we think it is. Oftentimes it's more about that rapport. And I think that's a theme that we come across in our book club a lot. A lot of our readings say it's all about how much people like you, how much people trust you, and how you can deliver on that. But going through tough negotiations and objections, I think one of the best things that I read recently was Never Split the Difference. And I've thought that the best method of dealing with tough negotiations and objections is to acknowledge them before they come up. So be like, I know that you're going to say this costs too much. But my question is your method really going to save you that much money? Does it save you that much money long term? Something along those lines, acknowledging what their objection will be before it comes up, I think is probably my favorite way of diffusing an objection from what I've seen.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. And that was a great book. So this is almost like the takeaway selling that you and I were in a course by Elliot. I don't remember his last name.
Yeah, Elliot Smith.
Elliot Smith, yeah.
That might be an artist. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll acknowledge Elliot in the credits and things like that. But his thought about kind of the takeaway selling. If you are not into this 100%, if this is not something you really want to do, this is not for everybody. And kind of starting from that perspective of the objections up front. And I think that's worked really well for both of us since we took that course, and that's also in the Never Split the Difference too.
Yeah. I feel like it really resonated more in Never Split the Difference, because I know in the course there was a lot of sales stuff. There was the 5 Ps, and you pitch and go down the pathway and all that sort of thing. But yeah, dealing with objections usually comes after all of that, in my experience. And I think if you can knock those out up front, it's just so much more powerful. And I'm not saying that I have the most experience with this sort of thing, but yeah, I can definitely see where that is helpful. That is powerful.
Yeah. So you do it in the pre-frame, here's what we're going to talk about. And, this may not be for you, and that's cool. That's perfectly fine. We may walk away from this conversation knowing more about you and knowing more about me, but we don't have to make a deal today. So that's cool.
For sure.
Yeah.
How about you, John? Any thoughts?
Well, it's great when you're selling a product or a service, but that's not the only time you're selling. When you have negotiations with an individual or individuals, and you are trying to do something that is not in their interest to do, it's still what you said is very, very good to be able to do. It's not always possible, but it certainly is. I've had to fire a couple of individuals in my life. One was a private sector individual, and one was actually in the military. And I mean, an enlisted person. I was an officer.
Wow, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough to fire an enlisted person, from what I've seen.
Yeah, well, what made it even tougher, and what you will understand, is he was in what they call sanctuary. He was in 17th year.
Oh, wow.
So, the individual I had to fire as a private sector, there are rules you have to follow, and you have to tell them 30 days. You got 30 days, then you got 60, and where we were, it had to be 90. But when it came to the final conversation, I told him what had to happen, and I said, "You've left me no choice." And he said, "I know." He says, "No, I agree with you." And I said, "Okay." I was just totally not expecting that. But of all the stuff that led up to it, is what made that happen. Whereas in the military, I had to go to my boss, the colonel, and tell her that this is what we have to do. And she said, "We can't." I said, "Well, ma'am, I don't like that word." And I said, "There's always a way." I said, "At the very least, we have to get him out of the way so we can continue." And a little backstory on this: the colonel I worked for, when she hired me. Okay, I was in a flying organization. I went to the data process organization, and they had been failing tactical evaluations one after another. First they failed the operational readiness inspection, and they said getting tacky valves, and they were failing those. And I said, "Ma'am," I said, "I can fix that for you." I said, "But we're going to have to get rid of this guy. He's got to go away." He said, "Lieutenant, whatever it takes." I said, "Yes, ma'am." I said, "You put him somewhere else so he's not in my line of..." And she did. And we passed the first tack eval flying colors.
There you go.
But you have to do what you said is a good thing, but it requires insight. It requires observation. It requires thought. And you got to actually get a lot of research into it before you actually go have the conversation. Even in sales, have an object or a service. Got to know your customer.
Yeah. Both customers in your case, because you have this guy and then you have the rest of the company,
Yeah, right.
Right. And if you can't serve both, you have to do something. And that sometimes involves a tough conversation.
Yeah. It's not easy. The guy that was in his private sector, he was surprised. He said, "Oh, yeah, I agree with you." So, okay. Whatever. Anyway, you asked me what time it was. I told you how to build a clock. I agree with you.
Cool. Right on. How about you, Sean?
Make sure I'm understanding the process being the first time and all. Basically, am I supposed to just kind of go off of what y'all are saying, or do I need to have an objective?
So it is a free flow thing. But whatever you think, like the topic is tough negotiations and objections. So whatever insight you feel you have, even if it lines up with us or if it's something new, is totally fine. Whatever insights you have on tough negotiations and objections.
And you can disagree with us. That's good too.
Yeah. So an experience or a story or a anything you like.
Yeah. So we have 45 years of expounding. No, I'm just kidding. So no, two things actually. One is Paula and I recently spoke of the book that I've gotten done reading by Marcus Sheridan, They Ask You Tell. It's a philosophy, it's a business philosophy. And Mickey, he brought up that exact deal.
Okay.
Marcus Sheridan, they ask, you answer.
Okay.
That's just in the name of the book. That's the principle, right? It's identify what everybody's asking about your product and going and communicate it. So not to belabor that point, otherwise I'll stay on it, because I'm even writing a paper back to our company on how to better implement the idea of video and this idea within our marketing strategy, shall we say, one of our pingents of our marketing strategy. But yeah, it's spot on, Mickey. There's a lot to be said to having objections handled at the forefront, but I think that you can also just implement them as you go along, or utilize them as you go along. But to that end, I had a situation, and I haven't really thought too much about it, so that I don't know how productive it will be, so pardon me. But I had dealt with 6 months ago, out of the blue, I had an operation, we'll name nameless, or rather will remain nameless, that basically sought me out. I knew of the company, and actually, when they were smaller, our agency worked with them.
Okay.
They've in turn acquired more people and or acquired more business, and we had helped them pull their fat out of the fire. In turn, the partners chose to go a different direction after a year. Well, you lick your wounds and move on. So a few years later, which was now last year, a third party comes to me and says, "Hey, this brand," and starts describing it, is looking to talk to you about trying to at least interview you, basically, for doing their aviation insurance. And I said, "Is this by chance brand X?" And he chuckles. He goes, yeah. I said, okay. I said, I know these people very well. And so we went into a little bit of how I knew them. And I said, if this individual is going to be involved, I said, I don't know why I would be involved. And he said, all right, tell me, explain more. And so I just went in. And so he's like, well, that's the guy who's basically, all the other partners are gone, but he's now stayed, and he's now brought in some other partners. I said, okay. I said, I'm just letting you know. And he chuckled. He goes, well, I understand, because he knew the guy's personality. And so I agreed. I guess the short of this story goes, I agreed to go up there and visit with them, because they were on a whole different level. And it's like, okay, yeah, I can help you, especially if you're in the growth mode. You need direction, because you're about to grow really fast, because you're about to acquire some other operations. And because, they're literally across the United States. It's an FBO charter operation. And so went up there, and I thought I had it in my mind. Maybe I didn't communicate it well. This is, I guess, that what I'm thinking through when you talk about objections and what have you. His question, he went through, he said, hey, this is what we're doing now, and kind of gave his story. And he goes, so, how many charter operators does your agency have? And quite honestly, I don't know why it threw me off. Maybe because I wasn't necessarily expecting the question to be from that perspective. I was like, well, what do you... Because I don't think in my 20 years have I ever had another operation to say, how many, wanting to know a number of them do I do? So, like I said, my brain can go into engineering mode quickly. And so I was literally trying to do 1, 2, 3, 4, because I could tell that's what he wanted. He didn't want, because I ended up giving him, I was like, all right, we've got, just out of our agency, me personally, this is about how much we have. Agency wise, shoot, I said, this is probably about how much we have. And he goes, oh, really? He goes, so he kind of delves in a little bit further. I said, yeah. I mean, I said, I'll come back with a more definitive answer for you. And we went into talking about some of the things that they were doing. And I said, well, are you communicating that, or rather, is that being communicated with your current insurance company? And they're like, no. And it was, so we talked about a few different things. And I said, all right, well, I said, to me, that would be, I said, I understand you guys are basically interviewing people. I said, that would be something you would need to do. I said, I guess I'm giving a little bit of my capital intelligence away, but yeah, you need to do that. And then, kind of went on from there. And the conversation ended. I ended up getting back, as I drove back down that afternoon, I got a hold of some folks in the office. I said, hey, do me a favor. I said, give me, within reason, give me the exact number of X operations you have. That night, I put a draft and email together, think about it, put it the next morning, say, all right, this is what I want. And then I shoot him an email with 10 bullet points, if that. And basically, they were just like, you could read them all on your phone, was how I was really trying to get it, right?
Yeah.
So all that to say is the objection or negotiation aspect of your question was, I still to this day don't understand, because they came back to me. Sorry to finish out the story. The third party came back and said, yeah, they chose to go with a different agency. I said, okay, I hear you. I know of this agency. I said, really? And I granted, now your ego gets all puffed up and you're like, oh, geez, I'm the agency of the South. Yeah, whatever. It's like, screw you. No, but it's just, but I really did that agency. It's like, you know what? I bet you they did. Because they have a very large East Coast operation. And I was like, I bet you they probably utilize that operation is kind of like, everybody knows this brand out there in the U.S. and that's the guy. Apparently, I got bored, David, and he ended up needing to go do something better. But at any rate, no, I feel like I've gone on long enough. But it was interesting because I really didn't have, even though I didn't have a direct conversation to follow up with why they went to the other agency. I just never really felt like I had
do you think
either a good grasp of it. What's the deal? What's the whatever?
So sometimes when people throw up objections or ask questions or whatever, it's not real. It's just a reason that they don't want to do business with you. They've already made a decision, but they are, and they want to appear to be fair. They want to appear to whatever. So did you feel like they already had their minds made up before you went in? Or?
That's an excellent point. Probably so.
And why did they ask you up there if they'd already had their mind made up?
That's why I was sitting there and think. I think that they wanted, just shall we say, oh, you know what, we've dealt with them before. Let's, do we want to go back to them?
Let's see what's changed since we worked with them last.
Yeah, and quite honestly, we hadn't done anything wrong. Their partners dealt with a very large, actually the company that they dealt with is technically no longer even in business. They are now they're an aviation insurance agency, but they are now in the process of having to go out, and their business model is acquiring other aviation insurance agencies.
Okay.
And they're not even doing business with them anymore. I did think about calling back this third party and said, hey, you know what? This is in December when I was like, hey, you may want to call them up and tell them that I've just taken over 5 of their accounts, even though they've missed out on an opportunity for me to help their one account. But, again, that's me just being.
Just have to get that little dig in there. I like it.
All's fair in love and war, man. I mean, shoot, you might as well. Like, everything is fact finding, right? Like, it sounds like you're coming from a place of, this is the information that I have. It's all sincerity. It's all on the table. And I think Mom's right. I think she's right on it. Where people tend to, when I'm doing a sales call, about 50% of the time when it doesn't come through, it feels like they're looking for me to give them the reason that it can't work. Like they're trying to figure out why it's not going to work out. And especially since you went back to see somebody who you'd worked with previously, my suspicion would be that now that he's kind of the front dog, he wants to show that he's still open-minded, right? He wants to show, oh, look, this was somebody who I didn't want to work with before, but I'm so much more growth oriented to where I was back then that I'd even bring them back in to see how I feel. But truthfully, he probably still has his own motivations, deep down, 5 years, 10 years, whatever. If you say that if you said to someone, hey, I'm not going to work with you anymore, that sticks to both parties. You know what I mean? Like, no way.
Yeah. I mean, there is some of that, especially in our world. I mean, our aviation space is so small.
Yeah. Right. And that's why we have to be careful. In fact, in one case, we fired a customer, and we've only done that once in
we've been in business.
The amount of time that we've been in business. And, we do that very, very carefully. But, the reason we did it is because it's a small world and because this person was mistreating our suppliers, our photographers and stuff like that. He was chewing people out and, getting them to do more work than they'd agreed to. And, he was just being manipulative and not ethical. And that sticks to us. You know what I mean? So we can't have that. So we had to fire him. And, that is a stigma that sticks to us and sticks to him. We're not going to ever do business with him again unless they change hands or, have some reason that, we know that things are different and that it's not going to cause the same problem again. But I think he had absolutely no doubt in his mind what the problem was. Right, John? I mean,
oh, yeah.
We drafted an email, and we weren't trying to make it fit on a phone. We drafted an email, with here's, what we've tried. Here's what hasn't worked. Here's, where we're leaving it. Here's where the money sits. Here's where the work sits. You go forward, we go forward. It was like a divorce agreement, and.
Well, the thing that was the final straw was he refused to send back the photographer's equipment that he said he was going to do until something happened. Oh,
right. Until we agreed to do more work than we had originally agreed. And so he locked up our photographer's equipment in a room and told him he, wasn't going to give it back. And this guy had he had rented, it was lighting equipment and things like that he'd rented for the purpose. We're like, that's not cool.
We immediately drove out to where they were. Showed up on his doorstep, and the CEO was gone, living behind his second in command. And he said, "Well, whatever." I said, "No. This is what it was." And I showed him the agreement in writing. And, I said, "So that means that we're going to back out today. We owe you this much for that part of the time, right?"
Yeah. Work done today.
Well, I said, "Leave me a check." I said, 1, we don't use checks. 2, I'm going to do it immediately. So I got a computer out, logged into the bank. I said, "Do you agree this is the much we owe you?" He said, "Yes." And I wired it to him right then on the spot.
Just trying to be as clean and straight and current and right now as possible. So I guess a lot of people make the mistake of either arguing, getting into this. Well, you said, no, it's not the way it's done, and like we do in the class, I wish we could come up with a better acronym for this, but, ARS, acknowledge, reassure, solve, we need a C on the front of that, something, so it's cars, but acknowledge, reassure, solve, yes, I understand it's been a pain in the neck to work with us. This is not working out for either of us. Let's, I assure you that we're going to give you your money back. And here it is right now. This is as clean and good as we can be. And, we recommend that you get somebody else to do what you need done and, make sure that everything is in writing. Have a nice day,
So here's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Stupid as in silly.
Nah. There's no such thing.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, well,
we all have had teenagers. No, I'm just kidding. No,
yes, we have.
We've all been teenagers.
So, all right, I've thought about, because I told these folks, I said, hey, give yourself 3 years with whoever you go with. And so I've thought about, I've got it. Well, I do have a tickler in my system that I think a year from now. Yeah, I think I put it in there for a year from now to then just do a quick, touch point, and then wouldn't touch them again for at least another 2 years.
Yeah.
I go back and forth whether to even have a touch point. I guess some of that's because of my own, whatever, my head game. It's like, I'm not really sure if there's even a reason to even reach out to you, because we all know each other and we know what we can do. Y'all chose to go this way, and that's, whatever. So I just don't know if it's worth, I guess that's the question. I don't know if it's even, should I even reach out to them, or just want to see them in an NBAA conference? Oh, hey, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, yes, the answer is you should, because it doesn't cost you anything, and you never know. Things change.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you never know if you don't reach out, if they change positive for you or not. If you don't, you're going to lose. If you do, you might still lose, but at least then you know.
Right.
But if you don't, you're for sure going to lose.
Yeah.
It's like going to Vegas with a credit card that you don't own. You can roll the dice all day long, because it doesn't really, it just costs you time, which of course, your time is valuable by all means. Like, there's nobody who argues that. But if it's in regards to that potential windfall, it's probably worth rolling the dice.
Yeah.
But I mean, to y'all's point, just a reach out, just say, hey, how's mom and them? And I hope y'all doing okay. And I won't try to knock you over at the next NBAA conference.
I'll just trip you.
Yeah, but just a real quick, things have changed for you, things have changed for us. Here's a couple of the things that we know of. How's it going? As all you really need. But. David, you're back.
Oh, yes. I didn't know that I went anywhere.
It just went dark for a second. But that's
right. Well, it was not, again, I don't understand how that happened, but, I was following the conversation, and I feel like, aviation, there's a lot of companies out there, but the community, when you start, segregating it into insurance and things like that, is very small. I mean, most of my background in aviation, other than when I was in the Navy, is, on the legal side. And as far as I know, and maybe Sean can clarify, but I thought there were only basically 3 companies that actually provided the insurance, and that the guys, the agencies were just, funneling clients to those providers. And as a result of that limited field, it meant that every time I was involved in a case, I knew who the attorneys were for the other clients. There was a certain group that represented one airline. There was another group that represented somebody else. So if we went to settlement conferences and things like that, it was like old home week. I knew it was always the same guys that I was dealing with, and we could not represent other companies because we were conflicted out. And so it was almost set in stone. And I just was thinking about that. So I'm thinking, from an agent standpoint, given that the product is pretty much the same thing that you're getting, how do you differentiate yourself? Well, everybody's going to buy a Chevy. So how are you going to, because you really can't control the rates. I guess they've got some type of history, and if they go through, if you vet them and they've got various things, maybe they can get a better rate. But in any event, those weren't ever negotiations that I was part of. I think we're talking about difficult negotiations, and almost all my experience with negotiations involved cases that I was involved in, and you go to law school and you want to go to trial because you think, yeah, I win, they lose, I'm a hero. Experience teaches you that even when you win, you're not the hero, at least in most cases, because it costs too much to win. I had a client tell me after we won a case, well, I guess it was after he got his bill. He said, well, how much would it have cost us if we lost? And so, you're going into those scenarios. I think, we learned that if we could get the case resolved early on, recognizing that, there was going to be substantial costs incurred, before any judgment was received. If we had to bring in experts and we had to start, deposing people, all over the country, sometimes internationally, that the costs would skyrocket, and nobody was going to be happy if we had to go that far into it. So it was
right.
It was always difficult, going in there because I'm not negotiating with my money, and there was a tendency to get a little, I don't know, cavalier maybe. So hey, it's only $50,000. We're just $50,000 apart. Well, if I had to pay that $50,000, it would have been a much different negotiation. And so I tried to keep that in mind. But there were a lot of factors going on in negotiations that I was involved in that I wish we could have cut a little bit closer to the bone. When I first got started in automobile personal injury cases and so forth, well, I don't like to criticize other attorneys, but there were a lot of attorneys, the guys that advertise, have you been injured, come here, and they would promise the world, but often the case didn't merit, such a high promise. And so they had a client with expectations that were completely unrealistic because the attorney had given them those expectations. And so we would go into a case where, liability was certainly in question, and but the plaintiff's attorney had told the family that they were going to get $1 million settlement out of this, and we would go in thinking, well, what's it going to cost to defend it? We would typically throw some money at it, but maybe not even 5 figures, something that it's a 3-day trial or a week trial, and this is what it's going to cost to get ready for it. And, it's a sweet looking kid and you can't predict everything. So we would try to come up with some factor, but, I walked into many settlement conferences where, we weren't even within, $500,000 of each other, and that's not a good basis to negotiate. But there was absolutely nothing we could do from a negotiation standpoint because the plaintiff's horizons had been set so unrealistically. So,
right.
I find, I just think that when you negotiate, you have to know the players, and you have to know what's motivating them. And it's nice, if you've got a good authority figure. If I had a judge, like this is a judge that would be hearing the trial, and maybe he can get both sides. I expected the judge to hammer on me too, but of course I was always right, and I was always right on, and the other side was being unrealistic. But it frustrated me no end when we would go into a settlement conference and their opening was, well, we want $750,000, and they say, well, we think the case is worth $25,000, and then the judge would not, take us, aside and basically beat on us with a sledgehammer for a little while to get us, well, what are you really willing to pay, and what are you really willing to accept? And so we'd waste a lot of time on, maybe even go to trial and get a result. And so As far as difficult negotiations, if both sides were willing to recognize that the definition of a compromise was, I feel like I accepted too little, the other side, I feel like I paid too much, but at the end of the day, we can live with this agreement. If you go in with that mentality, I think that you're going to get something done. And if you don't, you're going to be spinning your wheels, and nobody wins in that instance.
Right. I think it's very seldom that we get, and, for this conversation, this is like the perfect group of people, because we've got an insurance guy, we got a retired attorney, we got military, and we got civilian. So I just had an idea. It would be really cool to maybe do a lightning round, one piece of advice that you have for people to do tough negotiations, and, people getting that from this group, I think would be really valuable. What do you think?
Before that,
yeah,
I'd like to, Dave, you really laid some stuff out that I did pretty much, because when I got divorced, my attorney did what you said. He said, look, you're right here and I can win, but it's going to cost me as much to win and extend it by a year as if you just paid. And I looked at him and said, then I can make a business decision, write a check, and we're done. He said, exactly. I said, okay, do it.
I think, there's a lot of psychological factors that go into, any litigation, any trial. And, the reason that we have a court system is so that, people will use words instead of guns and knives to resolve disputes. But, that it pushes things out, the time factor gets in, and especially in the aviation cases when, pilots were on trial and, families had, dead loved ones, and, it was just a process that you had to go through. They really, they didn't want just the money, just the judgment. They wanted some kind of sense of, that guy was wrong, and the world has to know how wrong he was. Or, I had a case where it was a husband who'd done something very stupid in flying the plane. His wife was next to him, and she was seriously injured, was never going to walk right again. And I think he wanted the world to somehow say, no, you weren't the one that caused her injuries. It was the other guys. And so all those factors go in. And I just think that understanding that there are issues that are unsaid, that are not really, yes, it's wrongful death, but it's, you're a bad person or something else that's kind of implied in the discussion that's not really articulated.
Anyway, so now you do your lightning round or whatever.
What do you think, Mickey?
Yeah,
does that sound like a good idea?
Yeah, that sounds great. How did you want to play it exactly?
Well, I was just thinking, like 1 or 2 sentences, if you can sum up the best piece of advice you have for people who are going into tough negotiations. What is your one piece of advice?
Cool.
Everybody cool with that?
Sure.
You might get some duplicates, but sure.
Yeah, and that's fine. You can just sum up, the short version of the story you told a minute ago, and that's what I'm going to do. So, that's fine.
Good for editing purposes, right? I guess you can say, you can build a little trailer or something of like boom, 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 boom. So
exactly. See, lightning round. There you go. I've heard other podcasts do this, and I think it's really cool. So I'm just being a copycat, but
Nice. No, I mean, if it works, it works. Other networks do it all the time. So
yeah.
Okay, cool. So my one piece of advice for tough negotiations is start with the tough stuff first. So discuss the thing that they're going to like the least right away, and then you can talk about anything else after that.
It's all uphill from there.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. My advice is to not argue, and instead to acknowledge, reassure, solve.
Wow. I'm going to tell you to do your research. Know your whomever you're negotiating with, be it a client, an attorney, anybody, and do your research.
Client focused. Good deal. Go ahead, Sean.
Very similar to John, but different twist was just know your client, power is information.
Yes.
Or information is power, excuse me.
Right. Got it.
Good deal. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I would just say, have a clear understanding of what your bottom line is.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's not always money.
No, it isn't. Yeah, peace of mind is extremely expensive.
Right.
Yeah, I think if somebody could do all 5 of these things at once, there'd be no stopping them. It's just not that easy. But I think it's all really, really good advice. You guys definitely have experience in sales and that sort of thing, so that's great. Cool. Well, does anybody have any final words on objections and tough negotiations? Anything that they felt was left unsaid?
I would say that it's tough, but you can't take it personally. If it's business, you say you look at it that they're not saying that you're bad. They're saying that either your proposal is not what they want or something like that. But I can't say that I was always successful in not taking it personally, because you get enthused. You start to embody what your client is doing. I had to pull my senior partner off the opposing attorney one time because he was taking it personally. But if you can remember, what the bottom line, what the ultimate goal is, and work towards that, and try to stay away from anything that doesn't work towards that. It's not productive to call somebody an idiot. It's not productive to say that's the most outrageous thing I've ever heard in my life. If you can keep working towards a goal and recognize that any settlement, if it's a good one, is going to be one where you think you paid too much and the other side feels that they accepted too little, but at the end of the day, they can live with it.
Good deal. Cool. Well, let's pitch out. So my name is Mickey Gaminal, Gaminal Tutors, ASVAB Domination. You can find me on TikTok, gaminaltutors.com, Instagram, all over.
Fantastic. Paula Williams, ABCI. We do marketing and sales for aviation companies. We help aviation companies sell more of their products and services, and we are just barely on TikTok. But you are more likely to find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Cool.
And the podcast.
The best thing I can do is say IBID.
Oh, we're on Audible now. I just looked this morning. That's our latest.
I know you were going for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sign out would be, again, Sean at CSNA, and I just help folks with identifying things that affect their bottom line in the insurance space.
All right. Hello, I'm Dave Pearl. I'm at theflywriter.com. I write for aviation businesses. If it can be written, I can write it. Let me put wings on your message.
Excellent.
Fantastic. Well, great job, you guys. This was actually a really, really cool group to have show up for this particular topic. So.
Yeah, I appreciate how applicable, like Sean and David, your guys' stories were like super, super real, like very, very like, this is when I was trying to sell something, this is when I was dealing with this, like very, very applicable, which is awesome.